Hello knitting friends, and welcome back to Jack Knits. Today we're going to learn how to do the basic bind off. That is how you're going to remove the stitches from your needle to enjoy your finished knitting project. If you're new to this channel, you may want to review the videos that I produce, which explains how to perform the other very basic knitting functions, and that is how to cast on your stitches to your needle, how to do the basic knit stitch, and the basic purl stitch. And today we're going to talk about the bind off. I will have links to those other videos in the description below, so you may want to review those as well. So I'm going to demonstrate the bind off with this simple stockinette swatch of knitting, where I've knitted one row, then purled the next, then knitted, purled, etc. There are very many different ways to bind off your knitting. We're going to just review the basic bind off. In future videos, we'll explore together some other methods of binding off your knitting, which gives a little different bind off edge look, but let's just focus on the very basics today. So to start, I'm going to put my working yarn in my left hand, which is my preferred method, but if you have been learning how to knit with your yarn in your right hand, the method of binding off is really the same. The same steps are taken, so you should be able to follow along no matter what style of knitting you are used to. So let's start by, I'm going to wrap this working yarn around in my left hand just to give it a little bit of tension. All right, so I'm going to start by knitting the very first stitch on my needle. And then we're right away going to knit a second stitch. So you will have 2 stitches on your right needle and the rest of your stitches on your left needle. Now to bind off your first stitch, I am going to take my left needle, grab that yarn grab that stitch, that first stitch on my left needle, and pull it over my needle, that first stitch, and bring that yarn through. Okay, let's show that again. I'm going to knit another stitch. So I've got 2 stitches on my right needle. I'm going to grab that first stitch here and pull it off my needle over that first stitch. And then I still have 1 stitch on my right needle. So now I will knit again a second stitch, because you're always going to want to start with 2 stitches on your needle. Grab that first stitch, pull it over that next stitch on your needle, pull it off till you've got 1 on there. So now I've knitted up, bound off a couple stitches. Let's do one more. Knit. So I've got 2 stitches. Grab that first stitch, pull it over that other stitch off the needle. So let's do that for all the stitches on your needle. You'll do that till you've come to the end of your stitches, starting with 2 stitches on your needle, grabbing that first stitch, passing it over that second stitch, off the needle, and we'll do it again. Knit another one, pull that first, over the second, and off the needle. So let's do that all the way to the end of our knitting until we have all of our stitches bound off. And when you bind off too, just make sure you're not pulling those stitches too tight. You want them kind of loose, because if they're too tight, your bind off edge will kind of pull in the sides and kind of make your knitting not lay real flat. So we want to avoid that and keep it kind of nice and loose. All right, couple more. We're just going to do the last 2 stitches here. Okay, so now I have bound off all the stitches on my left needle. I've got 1 stitch left. So to just wrap that up, I'm just going to kind of pull that so it's got a long loop. Take my scissors, cut the tail. I can just pull that through, and now I have bound off the stitches. I got a nice bind off edge and a cast on edge, and now my project is complete. So I hope you found this helpful. If so, please like and don't forget to subscribe to receive notifications of new videos all about knitting tips, new stitches, creative patterns. Thanks for watching. Happy knitting!